epigenetic changes are reversible through proactive lifestyle choices. But high quality nutrition is expensive no matter where you live. Accessibility is a tremendous opportunity with physical activity and exercise. Science is very clear that there is not any amount of safety to utilize alcohol.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you again to a new edition of Beyond the Cancer Diagnosis interview series. Today it's my pleasure to welcome Sami Mansfield, the founder of Cancer Wellness for Life Institute or Center, to join me in a wonderful discussion. This time from other point of view than usual. We'll cover the psychosocial dimension of cancer, but from well-being and lifestyle point of view. Sami, welcome, and thank you for accepting my invitation.
Hello, good to see you. Thank you, Adrian, for having me and expanding on this really essential topic, which obviously complements both OncoDaily and the psychosocial side for our patients and clinicians.
I know that you are involved in lifestyle and well-being for some time, and now you are approaching this issue, which is not easy, an easy issue, dealing with cancer patients, with cancer care, with treatment. And I would like to ask you to begin our discussions to share for our audience the idea behind this Cancer Wellness for Life organization and the main mission of it.
I would love to. And for the sake of our interview, I'm going to go back in time and come forward pretty quickly. But I started my career in 2003. In 2003, I started working as a cancer exercise specialist in the United States. I was based out of Kansas City, or right in the central part of our country. And I knew at that time that many of us, like many of us do, exercise had potential benefits for people with cancer, but this was prior to having any recommendations that exercise was beneficial, much less safe. So at that point, we were still doing very, very early studies. But here's what I really experienced in the care of taking care of the individuals with cancer. They were very interested in exercise, but they were experiencing so many other side effects, physical side effects, such as just fatigue or joint pain, psychosocial side effects, like you mentioned, perhaps anxiety, depression, fear of recurrence, practical barriers to exercise, as well as other lifestyle. And what I really realized was that exercise couldn't be a standalone intervention for full comprehensive care of the patient. So in 2003, I was working in the community. Fast forward, I actually was part of an early research study with a big academic medical center looking at exercise in the postmenopausal breast cancer space, and then worked in the community, in academics, in research. And what I really discovered was that there were so many programs across the world that were doing good clinical care but didn't know how to deliver all of the aspects of lifestyle. So I took that experience and created a consulting organization that's both clinical facing and then has some patient facing pieces, because I know that there isn't a perfect plan for everybody. And I wanted to kind of create conversation and just create more tools and accessibility in a broad sense. So hence Cancer Wellness for Life, because it is all about how we live our lives to the best of our abilities.
Uh, you mentioned the organization, you mentioned also the healthcare system as an entire.
Mhm.
And as we see nowadays, we are living tremendous times in technologies in cancer care. But as any other thing in our life, comes with every opportunities come with challenges. And from your point of view or from your activity, these challenges are related to human being. For example, obesity, physical inactivity like sedentary
Yeah.
life, and low
Yep.
dietary quality are, unfortunately, nowadays the reality of the majority of human beings. For example, the statistics said that 10% of cancers are genetic mutations, 40% linked to lifestyle, especially smoking and obesity. And
Mhm.
now we are understanding that epigenetics or environmental factors that influence our DNA. In this regard, could you tell us about the physical activity pyramid and its role in weight management and lifestyle?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great question. Like, several pieces here to unpack. I want to say that, we do know that at least currently 2024, 2025, where we are in this time point, we still say that only about 10%, maybe 12% in the new data of cancers are lifestyle mutations that we know. But like we mentioned, 40% are related to lifestyle. The thing about smoking that's also really interesting is that the average smoker has a lot of the other unhealthy habits, so to speak, that are part of that overall lifestyle. Smokers tend to be less active. Smokers tend to be more likely to take in processed foods based on palate changes, access, cost, and things like that. So I think that smoking is an indicator, but also part of a comprehensive lifestyle. Then, of course, we talk about obesity, and we know that there are 13 types of cancer that are linked to obesity. But then the question I always have is it body fat? Or is it lack of muscle because of inactivity? What is it? And then, as you mentioned, I love this idea of understanding epigenetics, which includes things like environmental factors. Microplastics is a hot topic. What's in our water? What's in our air? What about our stress? Bottom line is, we know that these things are negative or unhealthy, but we don't really understand what exactly does that mean and what do we do about it. But one thing that we know is that our DNA, our personal DNA, which is where we see genetic changes, is influenced by lifestyle, which is epigenetics. What's interesting is epigenetic changes are reversible through proactive lifestyle choices. So I take a smoker, for example, and say, hey, listen, if you even reduce your smoking, you will see physical cellular benefits in 2 weeks. If you reduce your smoking and just move a little bit more every day, you will feel better, your blood pressure will go down. You will start to see different mood changes, sleep changes, etc. So I actually think, and yes, I'm perhaps biased because I came from exercise, that really emphasizing physical activity, what do we do, but also reducing inactivity is one of the most powerful tools that we have available across the globe. Also, it is predominantly free. We know that financial toxicity, time toxicity, all of these lack of access to care is tremendous for our patients. So, yes, I love nutrition quality, but high quality nutrition is expensive no matter where you live. Moving or getting your tush off the chair is free. So I'm very drawn to that. We are not going to, for the sake of our conversation, go into all the how much and the science of that. But the bottom line is physical activity means that everybody should move, no matter if you have cancer, you're in treatment, you have advanced cancer, or any other chronic disease. So I really want to think about how we use that foundation to really drive forward the health of our globe. Because again, accessibility is a tremendous opportunity with physical activity and exercise.
Uh, as you mentioned, and I have to go back to this term of sedentary. We are living a period when human beings overall we are living in a sedentary life, especially after the COVID, because
Yes.
COVID forced us to stay in home and to work from home. So everything is happening from home or from office. So from a building, to put it
Yep.
that way.
Yep.
And in this regard, could you develop the 5 A's of behavior change? Because this behavior must be changed.
Yeah.
How?
Yeah.
This is the question.
Well, I think so. The five A's of behavior change basically helps us as clinicians, as humans, as friends and family members to find out where someone is as far as what we call readiness to change. So the five A's are ask, advise, assess, assist, arrange. Okay, so let's shelf that for a second and let's come back to sedentary behavior. So, yes, COVID made us stay home. Cancer patients were already staying home because we were like, oh my gosh, your immune system, stay home. So the world kind of caught up to where a lot of our cancer patients were. But here's what happened is that technology and access to things from our phones, our devices, our tablets, delivery. Now, granted, that's not everywhere. Not everybody does delivery, but here in the United States, we do a lot of delivery. What happened was it brought things to us and we didn't have to go do it anymore. Well, human nature thought, well, this makes my life easier. This gives me more time. This gives me more tools. I don't think people realized how much that behavior change was detrimental and that what was gifting them was also taking away. So when I talk to somebody about sedentary behavior, rather than scold them for having meal delivery or scold them for using, whatever technology, I start to talk about, do talk to me about the benefits of movement for you, or is there a reason you're not moving, or how many hours a day are you sitting? Write out your day for me. And I do this also with my clinical partners because I don't think they realize how many days, or hours they're sitting on a computer, just like we are right now. But asking that question is the first place to start. If they're not even interested in talking about the answer to that question, if my ask is a wall, then I need to move on. However, if somebody says, you know what, you're right, I've been really noticing that I'm more tired, my joints are achy, whatever that may be, I can move then into advising them, hey, do you know that this kind of exercise, moving a minute an hour, rolling your shoulders side to side, standing up, whatever that may be, is beneficial. And the most important aspect of behavior change is let's go through up to those five questions all the way to a range. Here's a resource to help you that the individual I'm talking to is interested. One challenge we have is we want to tell everybody everything, including here's where you go. And if they're not even interested in answering the ask, then we need to pause and maybe come back again. One challenge of behavior change is people have to be ready. In cancer, we don't ask people if they're ready. We just are like, here's your diagnosis. Welcome to the world. And now we're asking them to change their habits. So, again, I think the behavior change, like you mentioned in the psychosocial, is not just addressing mental illness and well being, it's addressing how we drive people forward into engaging in healthy habits. And I want to say for the audience of clinicians listening, this all goes back to you and I. So, yes, it's to our patients, but one thing we know is that the more as a provider I'm engaged in these lifestyle habits, the more comfortable I am asking the questions, the more comfortable I am in sharing information, and providers and clinicians and individuals that engage in these behaviors have better mental health, better physical health, and more resilience, less burnout. So we need to also be a steward and take a look at these questions for ourselves as we drive forward to our patients. So thank you for the letting me soapbox there for a second, Adrian. But I think it's key for our audience that we need to also take care of our clinical practice across the globe on these issues.
Uh, I uh, remarked that you mentioned uh, one thing at a time. This is one of the clinical principles of psychoncology that we recommend to cancer patients because cancer patients usually have this tendency of viewing the entire life in a moment. So they are in the lack of time. They think that the time is limited. So they have this tendency to make it all at once. And one of our
Yeah.
principles is slow down, take one thing at a time. So one
Yeah.
issue on a time. So can we apply on what you mentioned earlier to go with one, for example, exercise at a time or with one life change at a time?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that we need to be okay Like really not, dumping the entire kitchen sink, so to speak, at someone for them to feel like they're making progress in choosing a healthy lifestyle. We see, as an example, I'll go back to exercise just because the science is so strong here. We're really able to study exercise in a controlled environment better than some of our other pillars of lifestyle. That even in 1 minute little exercise snacks, as we call them, that we see mental benefits, we see sleep benefits, we see mood benefits, we see strength benefits. And so when I'm talking to someone, I'm like, listen, I'm not worried about, you eating the perfect diet right now. There's no perfect diet for cancer. I know you're stressed, you're feeling very stressed. Let's not focus on that, but like, what's the 1 minute, one thing you can do every day? And maybe it's once, maybe it's twice, whatever it is. But I left doing just exercise oncology for several reasons. And one of the reasons was we were so excited telling everyone they needed to exercise 150 minutes per week. We forgot to ask them, how many minutes per week are you exercising? So when someone is doing nothing and I tell them 150 minutes per week, people shut down. They're like, I can't. I don't know how. I'm out. And so I think that rather than focus just on recommendations, let's get to know people where they are and have those behavior change conversations. And also remember, we're humans. We're going to have barriers and obstacles and not feel good one day. So if we try to do too much, it's not going to be successful anyway. So something is better than nothing, and it doesn't ever have to be perfect. And it should be personal. It should be definitely something that fits the individual. They want to do yoga, let's do yoga. They want to do Tai Chi, whatever that may be, make it you. And I think that's really key. And that's something we can do with this space, unlike treatment, right? Treatment doesn't have those choices.
We are talking about lifestyle and behavior change, but what are the six pillars of lifestyle? To
Yeah,
to
I
mention
know.
them and to begin the
I should probably add that, right? We all talk about exercise and nutrition, but the six pillars of lifestyle, lifestyle medicine, or lifestyle habits are, of course, exercise, thinking about, meeting exercise recommendations, aerobic and strength, nutrition. We focus on minimally processed, plant predominant eating. Doesn't have to be vegan, but it could be, but plant predominant is key. Then we focus on the other pillars that have less of the science behind it for changing outcomes but more of the quality of life are significant. And those are stress management, sleep health, social connections, a very underutilized pillar in my personal opinion. And then lastly, avoiding unhealthy habits. So traditionally, we think about that to be smoking or alcohol usage, but in the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, we have expanded our unhealthy habits for our cancer population to four. So those two plus inactivity, as we mentioned earlier, looking at an unhealthy side of that pillar, and then sugar sweetened beverages, also a little bit of added sugar. The reason we don't talk about added sugar as a whole is because the recommendations for added sugar are predominantly emphasized or studied in sugar sweetened beverages. And that's just because of the measurability of that. So those are the six pillars of lifestyle. And again, I want the audience, all of us to think about they are habit changes, right? No perfect, just looking at habit changes around those six pillars.
now I will like to change a little bit the, let's say, the direction
Okay.
of our discussions and to get a little bit back to behavior change. And nowadays, everyone is talking about mindfulness. And
Mhm.
on my opinion, it seems that we are going on that, let's say, trap, like with positivity. You know, you have to be positive. Some specialists call it the tyranny of positiveness. And now
Mhm.
I guess the same thing it's happening with mindfulness. Everyone is talking about mindfulness and forget about what you mentioned, exercise, just be active, be attentive of what you eat, how you eat on sugars. But here comes a big challenge, the cultural background of,
Mhm.
I don't want to say nations, but let's say communities, because
Yeah.
also within US there are a lot of communities. And
Mhm.
how much cultural background of communities, of people coming from certain communities influence the acceptance of wellness and well-being in cancer
Yeah,
treatment.
so much, so much. And I think and I say we as the general, I felt when I've really worked in healthcare before I kind of, took out went to the consulting side is we thought about communities related to things like language barriers or perhaps ethnicity, right? And what we're really beginning to understand is that there are various layers of cultural and community and belief as well as experience that come into play. So as an example, I live in Denver, Colorado right now. We have a diverse immigrant population, very much Mexican and South American immigrants right now. And so we can say language barriers, right? Are we speaking the right language? But culturally, there has been some distrust in the healthcare system, as well as access to the healthcare system from a lot of our immigrants. And again, I want to be clear that this isn't necessarily an illegal crossing of an immigrant. This is legal immigration. But if we don't come forward and understand what maybe some of those barriers are and understand the cultural conversation. When I talk about plants and plant-based eating to my Mexican Latina population, I need to make sure that I'm utilizing foods that they're familiar with. Tofu, as an example, which is a great plant-based protein, is sometimes very much I have no idea what to do with that for my Mexican and Latino patient population. Now that I might talk about, say, chia seeds, really good omega-3s, good for brain health, really is an indigenous food. So I think that we just need to remember who we're talking to and not take a moment of just looking at the external bias based upon ethnicity or language. I think that this is a global opportunity. What's great is in every place we live, at least here in the United States and even some of our European nations, we have access and the ability to talk to so many different populations that are culturally represented. We need to go back to the 5 A's and ask. We need to start asking the question. And the other thing to think about is really identifying that some of the barriers that we maybe ask about, like what's your interest in plant-based eating, isn't necessarily that I'm not interested in this, I can't afford it, or I don't know how to shop for it, or that grocery store isn't close. So I think, it is going to behavior change, but it goes right back to ask and asking the questions and then taking time to hear the answer and then what to do next.
Overall, nutrition is very important for every human being. So, yeah,
Yes.
it is a thing that an issue that we all have to consider to a certain moment. And
Right.
since we are appropriate to finish our interview, I would like to ask you, what's your opinion about the following myth of red meat and cancer? There is a huge debate, a
Yes.
lot of, let's say, maybe misinformation, disinformation on
That's right.
media. So, what is the truth behind the myth?
Yeah. This is such a great question. And I'll be honest, like for years of my career, like I was really confused. We have science now that understands that when it comes to red meat, so we're thinking about, beef related products, there is a risk in cancer, but that is only in one predominant type, which is colorectal cancer. Okay. So when I have someone who's lung cancer or blood cancer or breast cancer asking me about red meat, what I want to say is, from a carcinogenic factor, you can have red meat. You should limit your quantities to 2 or 3 servings. I say palm size is a good, reasonable measure of this per week. You should try to have the highest quality that you can, but you're not actually increasing your risk of recurrence, say, of lung cancer or breast cancer by having some red meat. And in fact, some of the nutrition in red meat, like hemoglobin, can be really good for someone struggling with certain blood counts, right? So, what we want to say, and this is true in much of nutrition science, is you need to dig into who is the science for. It's typically related to a cancer type, or it's related to something specific within that cancer type, right? But overall, summarize, for colorectal cancer, red meat is not recommended. It's just not. For all other types of cancer, quantities are important. Quality is ideal. We want to avoid processed meats. So, thinking about cured bacon or other of those sort of nitrate driven deli meats. But those are really only existent in the United States, right? So, for those of you that are my European colleagues and you go into your markets and you're getting good products, like the Yomon in Spain, go for it, right? It's fine to do that in, again, quantity. But I think we need to not be so afraid. A lot of what we see is just vilified by media and is people that are driving policy for their own well-being, not your well-being. So I think it's important to follow that. I will add the American Institute of Cancer Research, which is also part of the global group, the World Cancer Research Fund, is the evidence that we follow. It's something I would recommend for anyone that is not familiar with those organizations to check out.
And the final questions, I have to ask because we were talking about red meat, but how about red wine? This is
Ah,
also another
ah,
discussions because usually doctors said, third
yeah.
glass of red wine
Uh,
in the evening, it's better for your, I don't know, health, for your tension, so on and so forth. So,
yes.
what's the case of red wine?
All right. So let's be honest. Let's be very clear what the data is. The data says that no amount of alcohol is safe for someone, or let's say no risk, right, for someone with cancer. Now, with that said, there are a lot of risky behaviors that we do because they're pleasure principles, dessert once in a while, whatever that may be. What I tell anyone that I work with who's had a cancer diagnosis is that, it's a carcinogenic risk, but so sitting on your butt 8 hours a day. Okay. But the science is very clear that there is not any amount of safety to utilize alcohol. Okay. So, we just sort of take the risk factor with that. So that is the data that we follow same organizations. Now, if you have enjoy a glass of wine as part of your social connection, we do recommend to follow like Mediterranean type eating, which has a little bit of red wine in it. It's a personal choice. But what I want people to do is to be educated, to know, and to be able to be empowered. And if they choose to indulge, they choose to indulge. I have zero judgment for that. I am not a drinker. However, if I were to be, I mean, red wine would probably be the thing that I would go to, or dessert once in a while. And there's nothing wrong with that from a social perspective. Just kind of know the risks and be aware, I think is key.
Sami, thank you very much for these insights from a not so well-known field of cancer treatment, and I'm very, very glad that you could share from your experience, from your know-how to our audience, mainly based in patients, specialists. And thank you very much for being with us today, and good luck in your activity further.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to OncoDaily on YouTube. Hit the bell icon to stay updated.